Captain Midnight.
With Infinity War finally hitting theaters this week, promising a new era for the MCU, I figured it was a good time to take a look back at the legacy of the first film, Joss Whedon's The Avengers. So, settle in with some shawarma, because we're taking a trip back to 2012 and talking about when the Avengers assembled on screen for the very first time.
Will somebody please help me? Someone stole my Visa check.
One thing that I find interesting about the Avengers is how easy it is to take for granted these days. In retrospect, it seems like such a surefire hit, a safe bet that Marvel made. But at the time, especially after just the first two movies of the MCU, it didn't seem that way at all. If anything, this plan to combine Iron Man with the yet-to-be-released Norse god Thor and old-timey hero Captain America seemed completely baffling to a lot of non-comic readers. And even many of those who'd read the Avengers for years were skeptical that they could pull it off. How could they pull together all these very out there and very different characters into the same movie and not have audiences just reject the outright ridiculousness of it? But then they did. Like, really well, actually. Don't get me wrong, the first Avengers is not a flawless movie, but it worked. The character interactions were funny and well written, the climactic battle thrilling. It really was the big event Marvel movie that I dreamt of since I was 8, watching Spider-Man the Animated Series Secret War episodes. But how does it hold up on revisit? Well, that's a bit more complicated. I still love Joss Whedon's character work in this one. Usually when people talk about his writing, they focus on his quips, which people tend to either love or hate. But I think what he does here deserves a lot more credit than that. You can tell he spent a lot of time thinking through all of these characters' dynamics, identifying where they'd get along and where the tension would come from. Bruce Banner and Tony Stark's friendship is a good example. Their scenes are some of my favorite in the movie, and that wasn't really taken from the comics at all, just a really good idea that Whedon had during the writing process. How he pulls off Hulk is especially impressive. This was a character that had failed to land twice, and that this movie, with so much other stuff to do, basically had to reintroduce from scratch all over again. But Whedon's script makes it look really easy, giving us not just the best Hulk, but easily the best big screen Bruce Banner. His transformation scene near the end, I still love it.
That's my secret, Cat. I'm always angry.
To me, it represents everything these movies do well at their best. It's an action scene, sure, but it's also really smart character development all at the same time. On revisit though, it's definitely easier to see the cracks in the story as well. Whedon's script made the character work look easy and effortless, but the same can't be said about the plotting. I know Loki is often cited as the best MCU villain, give or take a Killmonger these days, but I honestly don't think he's at his best here. What I really like about Loki is you never really know where he's leaning. He's a cynical opportunist, but he has his moments of being a decent guy. Avengers kind of flattens that out and uses him as just a pretty straightforward Marvel villain. He gets some good moments, but his motivations never really rise above standard bad guy material, and I don't think the movie uses his relationship with Thor all that well either. The other really dropped ball is the Chitauri. I don't want to harp on this too much because I've mentioned my problems with them in past videos, but these guys really epitomize the kind of disposable, faceless cannon fodder that so many other superhero movies have. I'm just really not a fan of that trope. We know almost nothing about them, their culture, their intelligence level, anything. This movie has no time for that. And I get it, these guys give them an excuse to execute that sweeping shot of New York, still one of my single favorite scenes in MCU history, but I still feel like they're one of the weakest points in the film. Taken together though, I think The Avengers still holds up really well, even so many MCU films later. It's got some of my favorite Iron Man moments, Hulk moments, Cap and Nick Fury moments, and I think Coulson's death, though really undercut as he would be almost immediately brought back on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., still plays great in the moment. Fury's use of the bloody cards to bring the team together, a convenient lie told when the team needed it the most, adds a lot to his character, who hadn't had enough time to be given much depth on screen before this. I actually find Sam Jackson's Nick Fury pretty interesting for a few reasons. He's based on the Ultimates version of the character, who Marvel drew to look exactly like Sam Jackson before he even had anything to do with these movies. But by the time he actually had the role, he wasn't exactly as young as he was in his Pulp Fiction days, and I'm not sure he's really capable of doing the physically demanding stuff that playing a super spy type might require of him. Really, in the Avengers, he just gets one scene where he has to run chasing a plane that's about to take off and shoot it down. And a lot of that was probably done with a body double. I'm not sure that really matters though, because he still makes such a great commanding presence in the dialogue scenes. Nick Fury, who always seems to do what he thinks is the right thing, but also definitely isn't afraid to get his hands dirty, has a lot more moral ambiguity to him, and that really sets him apart from most of the team. I'm convinced that if Sam Jackson had been cast in Iron Man being 10 years younger than he was, we would have a Nick Fury movie by now. Well, I guess technically we do, but you know, not one starring David Hasselhoff.
I'll get that vampire's blood if I have to suck it from her neck.
Another through line I really enjoy is Tony and Steve's complete contempt for each other. I gotta say, as much as I enjoyed Chris Evans' first turn as Cap, I think it was seeing him in this modern setting that really sold me on this version of the character. Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark is an incredibly popular figure, and he has been since the first time he walked on screen in Iron Man. So in a lazier Avengers script, it would have been really easy to give Tony all the cool lines and make Steve Rogers kind of the boring, bumbling straight man. Kind of like what they did with Cyclops and his scenes with Wolverine in the early X-Men films. But Whedon made sure that didn't happen, giving Cap plenty of ammo in his arguments with Stark too. In fact, I would argue the scene where he says this,
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off, what are you?
Has been the central question haunting Stark since this film, and it formed the backbone of Iron Man 3. In the end, this is just a movie I love to go back to, warts and all. Whedon's time with the franchise may have ended with a bit of a thud with Age of Ultron, and that's, you know, a whole other discussion that I'll probably have on this channel eventually. But he was exactly the right guy at exactly the right moment for the Avengers, taking the solo movies that had come before and blending the characters together into a well-balanced mix of action, humor, and honestly, a surprising amount of depth. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. A bit of a short one this week since all my college finals are really bearing down on me, but that'll be all wrapped up next time around, and we can focus on the main event, Avengers Infinity War. I'll be seeing the movie soon, and I will see you next week.